Hello and welcome to Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV, brought to you by the Center for Constitutional Governance. I am Kwagala, your host. The issue of political prisoners continues to dominate public discourse in the country, further exposing the inefficiencies and the injustices meted out on the citizens by the state. Well, in the course of this week, the Parliament, through the Speaker and the President, respectively, in a rare expression of concern, were the latest major stakeholders to wade into this debate. On today's edition of Focus on Parliament, we interrogate the role of the Parliament in the protection and the promotion of the fundamental human rights of the citizens, by highlighting the now notorious and unresolved case involving Dr. Kizza Besigye, his colleague Hajobed Kamlegea, and Counsel Eron Kizza. I am now joined by a panel of distinguished personalities to help us make a sense of this topic. Let me introduce them, starting from my immediate left. Is Professor Mwambutsya Ndebesa, an eminent academic and a historian, and a renowned political commentator. Prof, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me this platform. And the viewers out there, good morning. And glad to be here again so that we can deliberate on these issues of national importance, so that we build a state, a nation state, before it disintegrates.
It's a pleasure, Prof, to have you. Next to Professors Mr. Timothy Chemonges, the Associate Director of the Center for Policy Analysis and the Parliament Watch. Dogo, you're most welcome to the program. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, Isaac. Good morning to our viewers, and glad to be here. Looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. We are glad that through this platform, through these discussions that we have, we're able to contribute to a brick or to something small to the growth of this country. And for us at the Center for Policy Analysis and the work that we do through our Parliament Watch program, we are definitely excited to extend that discussion and the information we have on this platform. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed. And last but not least is Dr. Tolit Charles Atiya, who is a researcher and also a legal scholar. Dr. Tolit is also the Associate Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Doctor, it's a pleasure to have you. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers. I must admit that today I wake up under the weather. The rule of law in this country, that particularly at the Center for Constitutional Governance, we try to keep watch over, seems to be deteriorating at a speed, at a supersonic speed. Seeing Dr. Besigye in bathroom slippers, haggard, withered, was not a sight that that sent me to bed well. But anyway, like they say, least of all, we shall continue speaking about these matters. And we must speak, because otherwise, if we don't, who will speak for us?
That's a good point to get started. It's a pleasure to have you, Doctor. Tim, let me ask you to bring us to speed with the latest developments regarding this case. Despite a clear decision of the Supreme Court to have all active matters that were previously pending in the Military General Court Martial transferred to civilian courts, we now still have the absurd reality of Dr. Besigye and his colleague Hajobed Kamlegea and Counsel Eron Kizza, plus a host of other political prisoners, languish and endure detention in various centers across the country. But let us now highlight the missive by the President addressing the specific detention of Dr. Kizza Besigye, where he seems to emphasize the need to have a swift trial, but disregarding all the other considerations. What sense do you make out of that?
I think the president is very deliberate in his communication, and he understands the power and the weight he holds, especially when he comes out with such communications. And seeing the recent developments really, but also the angle for which the Supreme Court ruling has placed, especially the state, you know, in light of actualization of this, it puts them in a very interesting place. And so when you see the president coming out, raising concerns around the question of efficiency on our courts, we've seen also accusations from the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs on the lawyers of Kizza Besigye and the rest on their delay to issue to extract the orders for their implementation. It only speaks, you know, to the goodwill that is there to actualize the Supreme Court ruling. But more importantly, Isaac, is to say that when we look at the current situation, and as you've properly highlighted, there are many other people who are facing the same challenges that Besigye is actually facing. Not that it's just that they don't have the advantage of publicity that Besigye is facing. Secondly, I think that when we look at the question of fairness, but also the respect of rule of law, it comes in very handy. How we deal with those that have been arrested is very important. Any injustice administered to any individual breeds more injustice and creates animosity for this country. And therefore, there has to be a deliberate way for which we address most of these things. And unfortunately, we seem to see that the state is very insistent on pushing a specific direction. And for me, there are three things that caught my attention on the president's letter. The first is that the president seems to be heavily invested more than anyone else on this matter, and that he is willing to go a mile ahead to ensure that whatever his intention or whatever he has already formed in his mind, because looking at the missive, you get to understand that there is already a position that the president has taken, and that he's very interested in having that position taken through the courts of law. And so the level of investment that he has on this matter is great. But again, being a person who receives intelligence, our expectation is that you administer that, you use that intelligence, not at the disadvantage of individuals, but to prosecute your case better. I also got to learn from the other thing is my reading of the president's letter is you would actually be tempted to imagine these are individuals who have never met. They even don't know each other. Yet these are comrades who have been in the fight together, and they understand each other very well. And so attempting to utilize platforms such as our judicial system or the other institutions that we have to score either personal or issues that may not be in the knowledge of the majority of the people, I think is something that we must speak against. The last that from that letter was on the question of when the president asks who has delayed this process, you know. Again, it's a deliberate strategy to shift blame on either the judiciary or the lawyers of those that are accused. Yet you find that in this very case, the state actually in the Supreme Court was, you know, the applicant in the Supreme Court, you know, the Attorney General. And these, if indeed there is interest to advance justice, and that there is a deliberate interest from the state to first of all have these things processed very fast, and also more importantly ensuring that there is no abuse of the rule of law in the course of administering or delivering that. And so I find it very very interesting. This week, as civil society organizations, we came out to issue our statements in light of what's happening, and we're very clear in light of our expectation of the state in how it's dealing and handling matters. And our hope and the call again to the state and government is to ensure that we shouldn't use our judicial systems, our institutions, to administer injustice. We have a country which is country for all of us, and we must work towards administering justice, respecting the rule of law, but also more importantly, ensuring we have a space that is democratic enough to allow and accommodate all of us.
Let me stay with you for a bit before I bring in Dr. Tolit Timothy. Does it concern you that the president charges Dr. Besigye with orchestrating a deliberate campaign of blackmail, having undertaken a hunger strike, which he says is intended at averting justice? In his analysis, is the president being selective in the application of the norms of justice?
I mean, the choice of how one chooses to respond to any unfair treatment, unfair system, is at the discretion of the individual. And hunger strike, or it's one of those avenues, and especially utilized many times by individuals who feel that all the other avenues of accessing justice are not likely to deliver that. And so when Kiiza Besigye chooses to take the hunger strike as an option, it's because from his assessment he seemed to see that there are avenues, the level of interest by the state on this matter is extremely high, and that they are willing to go an extra mile to have him, face the wrath that has been decided. But also more importantly, again, looking at it, when we say president, he works through institutions to have his wishes be executed. And so for me, again, it goes to the point of how do we as a state ensure that we do not abuse our systems, we do not use our institutions to those that should be administering justice, and they end up being the chief administrators of injustice. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim, for your perspective. Doctor, this is already a complex legal and political case, so to speak. But interestingly, we now seem to have the unusual expression of concern from some quarters, including Parliament. This week in Parliament, we've seen the Speaker come out strongly to argue that this state should explain under what circumstances they are still holding Dr. Besigye and his colleague in illegal detention. The Honorable Norbert Mao, the Minister of Justice, is yet to give a quite definitive answer to that question, but he has indicated now that the General Court Martial, working closely with the DPP, has transferred files to the latter to have them review and then decide on the next course of action to be undertaken. What does this speak to you? The royal intervention of the Parliament in this matter?
I don't think that's the right word. I don't think there has been any intervention. I actually want to tell the listener outside there that this action of Parliament is nothing but crocodile tears. We have been completely shortchanged. I'll tell you, Isaac, look, like they say, it never goes wrong until it has started. It actually goes wrong before it starts. This Parliament of Uganda has a standing human rights committee, a substantive human rights committee. This committee was established after the elections of 2011. I have cared to look and try to understand what were the goings before this committee was started. We were very lucky in terms of the human rights movement that at that time the Honorable then Speaker Kadaga is a person who is both firm and forthright. Government tried to stampede the establishment of that committee because what had happened in the past, or what is the history of how human rights matters were treated in Parliament was that the entire body of human rights issues, complaints, and all that were basically conflated around the committee of rules, and then legal rules, and then I think it's legal rules and
Procedure.
and I think now it's procedure. Then I think later they have added a docket of equal opportunities. Or there's another one on equal opportunities.
No, Equal Opportunity Committee.
Yes.
It's a
standalone.
It's a standalone.
Yeah. So
committee.
all these matters were going. They were finding shelter in those two committees. Now that does not give explicit intention on matters human rights. So luckily enough, that committee was established. And a lot of investment, there is a civil society institution based in the UK called the Westminster, I think, Initiative. Foundation, Democracy and Human Rights. And they worked with the University of Oxford. And since 2011, probably to date, I would want to assume that a lot of investment has been done in terms of training, in terms of staffing, because I also looked at a report which tries to measure progress over the years. And you can see this investment has been done. And you know, time and again, we keep talking about these things so passionately because we're talking about public money. The financing of Parliament of Uganda today is substantive. So we expect as citizens, we expect at least some level of services in public goods and at a certain standard. So the coming up of the speaker the other day to talk about this matter, in the face of deadly silence from this committee, one, did not surprise me because this matter has reached at a point where, you know, in ordinary speak or in Kampala speak, it has become a hot potato. Because remember, by the time she was coming to say this, again coming from unusual quarters, particularly when you have such a committee that I'm talking about, that is expected to have full scrutiny. It has a full view and should have full scrutiny. And in one of the things, if you're looking at the development of these committees in parliaments around the world, they are given some kind of specialized training to be able to ensure that they keep thrashing out these issues and bring them to the mainstream debate in Parliament. But in this case, what happens? It was basically the leader of opposition, you know, that kept humming over this issue. And you know of the response. We discussed it here the other day in very uncharacteristic manner. The Speaker of Parliament says they have no role, you know. And I remember it was, again, Professor Ndebesa who was arguing and saying, what does he mean? What does he mean they have no role? Parliament has a role. In its role of making laws, they need to ensure that in the scrutiny of those laws, pre and post, that elements of human rights are actually embedded and prioritized. Because what else is there in the relationship of Parliament and the state, you know, other than look out for those issues of, you know, access, equality, you know. The other thing was their role of oversight. The role of oversight is quite overbearing and gives them mandate and responsibility to also look and scrutinize issues of human rights. So, to use the adjective rare, for me, I take it with a pinch of salt, because this is what they should do. Parliament at the time being presided by the Honorable Deputy Speaker, failed to show this muscle. Anita Among now comes, for me, in a manner of patronizing, because her statement comes one after the statement of Archbishop Mugalu Kazimba, when he was speaking in Muchwini, and called on special prayers and a concern for the health of Besigye, and asked the leaders of the country to, in whatever they are doing, to consider the element of forgiveness. It also comes shortly at the heel of concern from the leaders of the opposition. Honorable Bobby Wine, Chagulanyi, had made a statement. The leader of General Mugisha Mundu had made a statement. So I think she just, found it populist to make this statement. I don't think they were serious about anything. And the reason I say they were not serious about anything, this is almost coming to, it's now over 2 months, isn't it?
Since the arrest?
Yes.
Or the decision of the
No,
Supreme
since
Court?
the arrest.
2 months.
2 months. And the decision of the court is now coming to
a month. It
to,
was
to,
rendered
yes,
on
to a
the
month.
31st.
Yes. And I don't know, maybe Timothy knows, there has been no substantive debate in the House. All in that order paper, this issue has never found its way. It has only been discussed in an inferred manner when they are discussing other issues. So you can see that allows you, because a parliament is supposed to scrutinize, including the scrutiny of the response of officials, government officials, to matters human rights.
Doctor, what do you make of the previous visit by the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights to Rosira, where they had an interface with Dr. Besigye regarding his plight, and they made a report back to Parliament?
Well, that is a gesture any of us would welcome. But would like to see a little more seriousness in this issue. First of all, there are global standards, the universal standard of how that Human Rights Committee should be formed. In the anticipation that, when you have a unanimous parliament like the one we have, where you have a huge majority of the ruling party, with both true and mob members, you need to have a committee whose composition is a little odd, in the sense that it's made of more members of parliament of the opposition than the ruling party. Because this committee almost shadows it almost shadows the office of the leader of opposition. Now, as it were, this particular committee is chaired by the NRM, and that was a deal they struck in Parliament, because at the time they were introducing this committee, they intended to block it, because their fear was that the opposition could then use it for its own political instigations. So as a compromise position to allow the committee exist, they opted to chair it. And that was a compromise the opposition accepted. Once they got the chair, they again, this chair for standing committees, especially special interest committees like this one of human rights, the chair should be elected, and often should be somebody with either a lawyer or expertise in human rights. But we know that all our committee, except for those given the preserve of the opposition, they are appointed. So what am I driving at? From the chair and the composition of the members, the majority of the 11 members, plus, I think, plus 4, are majoritarian NRM members. So, is there really a reasonable debate? Is there really a goodwill or attitude to discuss issues of human rights in this committee? I am not sure. So when you talk about this visit, I am again inclined, yes and no. Yes, that was a good gesture, but the no is what actually comes out of that committee.
Interesting insights. I'll return back to you, Doctor. Prof, let us now again spotlight the critical role of Parliament in the promotion and defense of human rights. This is an issue, Doctors Besigye's plight, that has galvanized the public sentiment to demand for justice, going by the commentary on social media, and I think the media, both traditional, radio, TV, and also print. But the real issue is now the move by the executive, specifically the president, having indicated it in his missive, that the NRM caucus is going to consider introducing amendments to the UPDF Act so as to fill the gaps that were pointed out by the Supreme Court and have a new piece of legislation introduced before Parliament. Could this potentially upend the scales of justice in your assessment? What is most likely to happen?
Thank you. What is most likely to happen is that which fits into the policy of the NRM government or the NRM rule or the NRM governance. The policy of NRM governance, unstated, or it is stated somehow, but unwritten policy is coercion, not consent. The policy of NRM governance is by coercion, not consent. And so, true to the statement that the leader of NRM, President Museveni, has said time and again before, that law is just like butter or blue band put on bread. What is important is the politics. So law will be subjected to the politics. And the politics is by coercion, governance by coercion, making sure citizens are put in place by coercion. This is against the background. I think President Museveni, really what he does is informed and is based in the belief or ideology, whatever we can call it, which he has held for a long time. If you want to understand where it comes from, you read his BA graduating dissertation, which was Fanonian Theory of Violence and its Verification in Mozambique. Quite a number of people don't know that he went to Mozambique to do his BA dissertation research together with other students. And he believes that violence...
He says he went to fight.
No, initially he went to do his BA graduating dissertation. In their days, BA students used to do graduating dissertations, and that's how he went to Mozambique. Now, he believes that violence liberates, and violence builds a nation. And so, these other trappings of the state, like the parliament, like the law, judiciary, whatever, those are just by the way. Fundamentally, it is violence which he thinks can build a nation. And he believes it and is practicing it. That's why when you read his missives, the first missive about this case of imprisonment and the court-martial and the Besigye and the rest, in the initial missive, he did say that the judges are not the ones to rule this country. In other words, he was saying it is not the law that is fundamental. It is politics. In this one, the latest missive, he was referring to, in one of the references, he said when you commit a serious crime, you are not entitled to a holiday. So he believes that bail is a mere holiday. It's a luxury. It is a luxury. It is not an entitlement. So the issue of the justice system, procedural justice, is not taken seriously. Procedural justice is not taken seriously. What the government takes seriously is coercion. If you can find ways around the law, find ways around the systems procedurally to make sure that you coerce the population into believing in government or coercing them into accepting, acquiescing. I think that is the English word they use in sociology. To acquiesce with the status quo, it will be used. Coercion using the guns, or coercion using the money.
Patronage.
Patronage. But as consent is concerned, that is used as a by the way in case the international community might shout or other people might shout, but the policy now is coercion. So how do you go about coercion? So what is going to take place, going back at your question on Friday, is to go around the judgment of the Supreme Court and to go around other procedural issues to make sure that the instrument of coercion is brought back, because that is the principle around which NRM governance is based. So that's what they are going to do. How do you strengthen coercion, the coercive machinery of the state? And you know the court-martial procedure, militarizing the justice now, is very easy. It is very easy to deny bail, because after all, bail is considered to be a luxury. It's just a holiday, and he doesn't believe in those holidays. So that one will be out in the court-martial. The court-martial, of course, will get directives from the commander-in-chief or the CDF or whatever military rank is somewhere. Or it could come from, actually, as the CDF, Mohozi Kainerugaba said, he was, when they were in Masaka, he said, we are going to consult the High Command. In other words, the High Command is the Supreme Court of Uganda. It is the supreme authority, the High Command. And God forbid if anything happened to our president today, I don't think that any other organ of the state will decide who will become the next president. It will be the High Command. So the High Command, which is quiet there, nobody knows when it meets, how it meets. It is not transparent. We don't know the procedures of meeting, the regularity of the meeting.
Whose members?
The membership, some of the members were constitutionalized and put in the law, even by names. Meaning, it is very strange. You lawyers can tell me how you put names in the law, meaning that they would remain there. If President Museveni today was no longer the president, he would still remain the member of the High Command, and which is the supreme organ. It is supreme. Practically, it is the supreme organ of governance under NRM.
These people don't die. Their spirits will be sitting.
Their spirits, it will be reproduced. It will be reproduced. I think they will put there again the names of the sons and daughters of the historicals. Yeah, because I think there is this policy which didn't come from me. It is not coming from me. It came from, I think, the president or one of the members of NRM. It is called DRA, Descendants of the Resistance Army. So the DRA will reproduce the High Command. The descendants of the Resistance Army will be reproduced, because they said those are the ones who are supposed to be entitled to the jobs. They have an entitlement because their fathers and brothers and uncles fought. Those will be there. But anyway, going back to our issue of the procedural justice that must be directed towards coercion will have to be reproduced. That is what is going to happen in the NRM caucus. How do we reproduce the coercive means, the coercive justice procedure to catch anybody? You know, you can be defined, whether you are a civilian or the military, whatever, you can always be defined as a terrorist, for example. And then they will use that securitization. See, justice has been securitized to the extent that any extraordinary means can be used to arrest, to prosecute, and sentence any Ugandan. So the securitization process is the one which is promoting the policy, implementing the policy of the current governance dispensation. So when we are discussing all these issues, we should always give them a wider context.
Professor, as a political analyst, do you worry that as a country, we are on a rapid and steady trajectory of an impending constitutional crisis? Because the position of the president seems to be that the NRM caucus is going to correct the said mistakes of the judges. In effect, it would mean to vary or circumvent the decision of the Supreme Court, which is expressly prohibited by an article of the Constitution, Article 92. What likely scenario could happen in effect?
I mean, I don't see the constitutional crisis in Uganda in the current dispensation. The issue is not constitutionalism, because constitutionalism is referring to the rule of law, is referring to having certain procedures and certain practices based on the law, as if that is the fundamental issue. You see, the members of parliament or the lawyers or the judiciary, we are involved in this gymnastics of the constitutionalism and the rule of law. But for the government, what is fundamental is coercion. How do you maintain the coercive arm of the state and embed it, and it percolates through all the systems so that ultimately the policy of coercion is maintained. So the crisis you are talking about is not going to be a constitutional crisis, because that is beside the point. What is going to happen is going to be the crisis of the nation state. You know, me, I hanker on the nation state. The crisis is of the nation state. All those processes and procedures and misprocedures are going to boil down to the crisis of the nation state. And when we don't resolve the national question, and we have got the national question crisis, and this anger that is brewing, continues brewing, it will reach a certain level. It can reach a certain level where the lid will go off and the Pandora's box will be opened, and we shall have a failed state and get into a national crisis. So I would advise those involved in governing this country to broaden their minds, and whatever we are doing, we look at it in respect of the nation state. The national question should be priority number one. Uganda is not yet a fully functioning nation state. Its nationhood is still malfunctioning. That software is still malfunctioning. And therefore it is liable to a political accident. And let us not joke around with the legal niceties, with arresting people, and thinking that we can use coercive. You cannot coerce a state together in the 21st century. No. My analysis is that you cannot coerce the citizens into a nation state in the 21st century. That was happening in medieval days. In other times, when there was no international community to say, don't commit genocide, don't do ethnic cleansing, because in those days you could do ethnic cleansing and you'd say, those who are opposed to me, go out. You know, President Museveni, in one of his victory speeches after the elections, he said those who don't support NRM should go and look for their own state. They cannot look for their own state. They won't get it anywhere. They are going to remain here. And when we continue joking around these procedural processes, we are going to court, demonstrating, you know, these court issues, demonstrations, which are put on the media. I have seen them going to the villages. The drones have come back. Many people are being arrested or abducted. Or the parliament is just joking about this issue as my friend Dr. Tolit has been talking about. They are just joking about it. The other day, the speaker, even after she had done what she did, which I'm not saying was bad, but later on she said, but you should thank me. I need to be thanked for what I have done. I think the political class in Uganda is not alive to the fact that there is a problem of the national question, and this country can disintegrate like other countries in the Great Lakes region or in some Eastern European countries have disintegrated over this. You can see this boiling anger around the question of Besigye, court-martial, and the courts and the public the public systems, and now the arresting of people. Now we have foot soldiers, we have foot lawyers, we have PLU. I have seen the way they behave. That is an organizational dangerous infrastructure that is emerging. PLU, I meet vehicles on the road with no number plate. I don't know whether some of you have met them. Vehicles with no number plate. This is like Kongoro, the behavior of Kongoro, the son of Mobutu, the way he was behaving in Kinshasa. How dare you drive? We are always arrested on the road for not putting on a belt and having a problem of tires. Somebody is driving on the road with a vehicle with no number plate. And when we are stuck in a traffic jam, they get out and you see them kanyamaring and, you know. Now that is an organization infrastructure making it ready for this country to disintegrate. Then we have got NUP, people also having their foot soldiers parading. The clash of these two can make this Kampala be on the boiling point. So, can our political class, those who are in parliament, those who are in the state house, those who are cabinet members, those who are in the military, those who are giving us political direction, rethink their minds and know that there is, you are talking about a constitutional crisis. That's a simple thing. We are going to have a national question crisis in this country when the tempo of this boiling anger reaches a certain level and we are going for elections. There is no amount of arresting, there is no amount of politicking, there is no amount of going around the court procedures and the procedural issues of justice and whatever that will resolve the national question. The national question needs consent rather than coercion. The national question needs to be resolved through conciliation, not through non-accommodation. The national question needs to be addressed by accommodation, not by extreme positions. It needs unity in diversity, where we accommodate diversity and we manage this diversity very well. Otherwise, the constitutional crisis, the military crisis, the parliamentary crisis, all will boil down to the national question when this country can disintegrate.
Professor, you paint a very grim outlook. I am afraid someone could easily accuse you of being a prophet of doom. But yes, you leave us with...
It is up to you listeners out there to take my views or leave them. But there is a national question crisis, and with the boiling anger, mobilization of anger, we can have the nation disintegrate, and we don't want it.
Thank you for that serious challenge to us, the citizenry and the political class. Focus on Parliament now takes a short break. Do stay with us. We'll see you back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. Glad you're still tuned on to Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. In this segment, we continue examining the critical role of the Parliament in the protection and the promotion of the fundamental human rights of the citizens, by highlighting the notorious and unresolved case of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, Hajobed Kamulegeya, and Counsel Eron Kiiza. Doctor, let us now turn to legal issues. This case seems to have no possible end in sight. We are caught in the web of legal gymnastics, legal drama, back and forth between the DPP, the Attorney General, the General Court Martial, the conventional civilian courts. Is this an instance where the courts play politics?
Interestingly, as it were, there seem to be a lot of confusion, and particularly it's not being helped by the fact that those who should be in position to interpret the law, those who are in position that we look up to get understanding of the law, particularly the office of the Attorney General. I watched bits of the Attorney General's arguments at the time the court entertained the habeas corpus petition. And it's a matter in court, so I wouldn't want to discuss the merits and demerits. But for an ordinary person, the orders of the Supreme Court are clear. There is no longer, there shouldn't be, there ought not be any more debate about interpretations. The orders are straightforward. There were three things that were clear. One, the ruling, and the majority ruling is of the opinion that the court-martial, as it were, constituted within the UPDF Act, and reading it together with the Constitution and the neighboring laws, it fell short, or it falls short of the parameters of any competent court. So that matter has been settled. That outfit that was known as a court was declared null and void. That animal, that creature no longer exists, particularly in the form it was found to be. The same court went ahead and made prepositions to those concerned, if they were still interested in this outfit. And they made numerous prepositions. Now, people are hiding or government apparatus are trying to hide behind these prepositions to make interpretations. These are orders. They are not requests. They are court orders. They had said they were not making any movement because there was no decree. They hadn't seen a decree. a decree was finally signed. So it now becomes an administrative matter. And not on the question of whether, how does this court come back? Because that is the gray area. That's not the question. The question is the files and proceedings that were ongoing be taken, transferred to the civilian courts.
Who bears the responsibility in achieving that?
No, the Office of the Attorney General, the officers are known. The sanctioned officers are known. We know who the chief government legal officer is the Attorney General. We know that the office of the chief prosecutor is the office of the DPP. We know that some of these matters were addressed to the Ministry of Justice. So the players are known. What they have failed to substantially show us as Ugandans is whether they have taken any action whatsoever. Because even in that court the other day, they were showing letters of correspondence. Letters of correspondence do not adduce any serious evidence. We want to see that these orders are being adhered to and nothing else. So I don't see any confusion in the ruling. The other bit of the ruling that is bringing confusion and which people don't really need to pay attention to is the response of the head of state. He has a right of response, but that's a by the way. Whatever he says cannot stay the orders of a Supreme Court. So if the Minister of Justice, if the Attorney General, if whoever else along that line is simply gerrymandering because they are waiting for direction by the head of state, then it is very unfortunate. It is very, very, very unfortunate. And I think that is why this discussion is paramount. This is the time that Parliament should swing into full action.
Which Parliament?
This one of Uganda.
You are still around the band.
This Parliament.
So are you insinuating that we have another parliament elsewhere?
This is the Parliament of Uganda, a resident on Parliamentary Avenue, Kampala, should swing into action and ensure that orders of the court are actually followed. Because they have a mandate in their oversight role. And that is an overbearing mandate, as I said before. One of the things that they need to ensure is that somebody now needs to come up with a substantive motion to debate this issue so that it's on record.
What they are going to debate is what they are going to pick from Entebbe on Friday.
Now, of course, the sad thing is, and I'm sure when Timothy comes, he will tell us a bit of this because he has an ear in Parliament. But you see, this caucus thing, and for me, there is nothing wrong with the caucus. It's all parliaments have caucuses, and unfortunately, in our parliament, the only caucus, or what seems the caucus, is the NRM caucus. There are many other caucuses inside there. And why they never come up to discuss anything, I am told there is a friend of mine who whispered to me that when this will go into that caucus, it is like a boarding school session. I'm told when the big man is arriving, actually they said in this hall where they sit, if you get in, if you have a glimpse of getting in, the way they arrange themselves tells you who is who. I'm told all the cheerleaders and the clowns are seated closer to the big man because he's welcomed, with the songs and entertainment and all superlations that people are now suggesting. I was shocked the other day that somebody, even with all this whole literature, the body of literature in military doctrine all over, somebody is still talking about field marshals. You know, the field marshal title resonated with World War II, because then there were the colonialists had so many vestiges. There were so many fields. So you emerged as an overall commander of many fields. We don't have any fields today. Where are the fields? So now when you say somebody is field marshal, is field marshal of what? Anyway, that is for another day. So this parliament needs to salvage us. We need some really potent response from this parliament of ours. And for me, the good thing is that we are going into an election, by the way. And I think the listeners need to begin to take us seriously. Because we only have one opportunity to negotiate with these members of parliament. You know, if they are acting the way they are acting, that is okay. But let us wait when it matters. And we also ask them these questions.
Do you still have the agency?
Well, we at January 2026, we can take back the agency. Yes, we can take back the agency.
You mean, who are you? The citizens?
The citizens. We still have an opportunity. And the good thing that the trend is good. All these parliaments, Timothy knows, we've been recalling them, but I think we have not hit a bang. I think now there must be a real mass record. Because you see what bothers me in this conversation of rental politics. They also know that certainly, and probably that is the downside of democracy, many of them know that they actually never return. So I think they're now using it as a matter of expedience. It's like, well, I am here. Let me sort out my problems. So I think this country still has a big challenge of where, you know, we have embraced democracy, but without democrats.
Interesting comments. Professor, let us now spotlight the role of the political opposition in parliament. The opposition does not seem to have an effective strategy of dealing with this matter. If anything, on one hand, they seem to push for a united front, as we observed yesterday at the headquarters of the National Unity Platform, which drew a variety of political actors from the opposition. But in parliament, they seem to be disjointed in their approach. The leader of the opposition at a press conference this week said they would undertake vigorous political action in parliament. That seems to be quite ambiguous. Are they doing enough to redeem the situation like Doctor is suggesting?
Thank you for that question. I think we have a saying in Runyankore that goes like this, that abachebarwanira omwishansha, that when you are few and you are facing an enemy that has got very many, outnumbers you, there are many. So what you do, you run to the banana plantation and then you start shaking the sanja so that the enemy thinks you are many. But you don't give up, you continue shaking the sanja, the banana dry leaves. So the opposition can continue doing what they are doing because they are raising these issues to the public, creating more awareness in parliament, raising the issue, especially during the question time. I think they can take up opportunity during the question time. They can raise the issue with the speaker, can raise the issue with the Human Rights Committee, can raise the issue in the public media, can also take the issues to the court, the various courts, so that the issue of justice, procedural justice, and other forms of justice can be heard. You mobilize awareness. Mobilizing awareness itself is not so bad, because the consciousness of people, from awareness, we shall see consciousness. I think the greatest educationist scholar, Paulo Freire, makes a difference between awareness and consciousness. That awareness is the knowledge, knowing some of these anomalies that are within the legal procedures. And they can continue raising them, beating the Sanja, even if they are few, because our current parliament, Dr. Tolit is talking about, he has a supermajority of the NRM. And what will be taken in the day is that one which will be instructed them to do through the caucus. However, continuing to beat the Sanja can heighten the issues, shine issues to the general public, because there is also accountability from below. There is what is called social accountability. There is social accountability from the citizens. There is a horizontal accountability from the different arms of government, whether it is parliament, whether it is judiciary, whether it is the IGG, Human Rights Commission, Equal Opportunities Commission, committees of parliament. There is also what they call diagonal accountability, that is from the civil society, whether it is the NGOs, whether it is the church or the mosque or the cultural organizations, which should also have a voice. The media, they continue also beating the Sanja. You never know what may come out of this Sanja. It can make a contribution towards the bread. Because for me, again, to disappoint you, Mr. Moderator, my most concern is not the blue band. These legal issues, justice here and there, they are also important, because even blue band is important if you have to eat more bread in case you don't have appetite. But for me, I'm more concerned about the bread. How do we reconstitute the governance systems? How do we reconstitute even the state and put it back on a firm foundation? The foundation of unity in diversity. We are a diverse country, multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, and we need to build a firm foundation, the pillar of managing diversity on tolerance and accommodation, because you cannot force all the people to think in a monolithic manner. That is why the NRM system also, the NRM system failed. You see, the NRM, the movement system, sorry. The movement system, which was thought to be an innovation, it finally failed because you can't force people to be monolithic. That is not possible. You have to be accommodative. You cannot assimilate. You cannot build this nation today in the 21st century through assimilation. That was in the medieval days when you could assimilate everybody, and whoever refused to be assimilated in the nation state, you just kick them away or you kill them off. You can't do it now because this is a new era. There is AU, there is international community, there is ICC, there is Amnesty International, there is a media, there is everything. So what we do, we need to reconstitute our mind, reconstitute the state, reconstitute the governance, so that we put it on the pillar of unity in diversity, of tolerating diversity, of accommodation, and we see how to manage this diversity by reflecting the different views in the country and different persuasions in the country, and respect for other political players as we move this country ahead. But if you don't respect people and you always dismiss them, that they are ideologically bankrupt, for example, I've heard this terminology being used. There is no group of people that are ideologically bankrupt. I think those who are using it don't understand what the concept means. They are just straight away borrowing it from the Russian revolutionaries and saying ideologically bankrupt. Even when you have a reactionary ideology, you are not bankrupt. Even when you have a conservative ideology, you are not bankrupt. If you are socially conservative, you are not bankrupt. If you are whatever, because for them they think they are the only progressive, and therefore they are pursuing a progressive line, a mass line, and therefore anybody else must be crushed. No, that can't work in the 21st century Uganda. Uganda is multi-ethnic, multi-regional, multi-religious, multi-this and that. It needs a new dispensation to reconstitute, review the governance process, and have the bread that is containing different ingredients and tolerate them. And then we can have the law, or we can also redesign the law, redesign our law, redesign our even our electoral system. In fact, for me, I support those who think we should have proportional representation, so that different persuasions in the country are represented in this parliament. We have different ideologies. You don't say people are bankrupt. No. Even if they have a reactionary ideology, that's not bankruptcy. You have to find a way of crafting a governance system in this country that will accommodate and that will be built on the principle of unity in diversity. But to think that you will force all people into, coerce all people into thinking like you, in believing like you, in one box, it will not work. You can do it for 30 years, for 40 years, for 50 years, it will break up. So my take is that the opposition should continue what they are doing. They may be having their problems, or because some of them are also looking at positions that they will get. I can see others are converting. I don't know why they are converting. You know, when you convert, they say you were stupid. Now you have seen the light. You are in the darkness. You have now seen the light, but I think they have seen the food.
Jesus has revealed himself.
I think they have seen the food. When they see the food, they go. But you see, that food is not sustainable. Again, to bore you with the Runyankore saying, there is a Runyankore saying that you are, you know, a rat or a mouse, you know, when people shift from a homestead and go away, there is a lot they spread down, you know. When you are shifting, you are touching this sack, you are touching this basket, and a lot falls down. So the rat comes and celebrates. But you see, it is celebrating the last meal. Because very soon it will run short of what to eat. In fact, it was better off having small crumbs before the people shifted. But when they have shifted and you are eating a lot, and you see the rat is deceived. It is under a deception that now there is a lot of food. Because it doesn't think consciously, it thinks it is eating a lot of food. But not knowing that that food is not sustainable, it is going to disappear. So, please, let us build a nation on unity and diversity. Let us use, I am not discouraging the opposition for what they are doing. I'm not even discouraging those within the movement who are also trying to make sure that we run the governance based on institutions. We run it on the rule of law. We follow the law, not the whims of individuals or whims of one group. We run on the principle of accountability. We run on the principle of transparency, and we build a nation state. So, Museveni, actually, I agree with him when he was talking about when you want to remove the jigger from your foot. You don't just go immediately and put the safety pin and do like this to remove the jigger. You continue beating it from the sides until the jigger gets out. So, those of us who want to build a nation state, and there are certainly constraints to building this nation state, who are refusing to accept that we need unity and diversity, we can continue pushing the jigger from all different sides until the jigger gets out. The jigger of intolerance, the jigger of non-accommodation, the jigger of militarizing justice, the jigger of entitlement. Those jiggers we can finally overcome them. But it is not easy when you are trying to push out the jigger, the foot gets some damage. The damages might be felt, but nevertheless, let's continue. But otherwise, I would want to call upon all political players, all political actors, to know that Uganda is multi-ethnic, multi-cultural, and there is still a problem because the British created a hardware called Uganda. They didn't create deliberately the software of intangible issues like tolerance, like unity and diversity, like accommodation. Those ones we have to build them consciously, deliberately, intentionally, in order to build a nation state. The national question is still around. We have very many questions. There is a northern question, there is a Buganda question, there is a Bunyoro question, the Karamoja question, the eastern question, the military question, the religious question, the Beira Bahima question, the Banyarwanda question. There are very many questions that we need to resolve. If we don't resolve them, this country can disintegrate and become another Yugoslavia.
That's food for thought for all of us. Team, let us build on Professor's submission. There is another reluctant actor in this whole matrix, the international community. We all agree that Dr. Besigye and Hajobed Lutale were initially arrested, abducted is the proper word, in Kenya, and then re-editioned back into Uganda. There is a debate raging in Kenya now that the government of President Ruto should bear ultimate responsibility for surrendering Doctor into the hands of his captors. We have seen statements from the other international organization, the Commonwealth of Nations, calling for the immediate and unconditional release of Dr. Kiiza Besigye. We have a new development on the African continent in the election of the new chairperson of the African Union. What do this development tell us? What is the net effect of all this? Could these actors on the international plane coalesce and bring about pressure to bear on the Ugandan government and release Dr. Besigye?
Thank you, Isaac. The international stakeholders and players are a very critical role, and they have a lot of say in how nations and institutions operate. And partly because of the influence they wield, the question of resources, the question of the ability to command many countries. But also there are players, and what they say carries a lot of weight. In our current context, we see that the international players have weighed in, and it is part of the collective approach of putting pressure on individual countries or on a specific country to take a specific direction, especially matters that weigh in on rule of law and matters to do with human rights. Specifically on Kenya, I think Kenya, I'll choose to look at Kenya as a very strong ally with Uganda, but also specifically looking at the current head of state of Kenya and President Museveni. The recent days, one seems to be learning from the other, and there is a lot of exchange in terms of approach and knowledge in what they are doing. And so I think that the decision by Kenya to hand over, Besigye was a very deliberate one. I don't believe on the narrative that they were not aware, and maybe the colleagues, the Ugandan military people went to Kenya and just picked him like that.
How do you pass at the border?
How do you pass at the border? So I think it's a very deliberate action, and it's very unfortunate that Kenya is making very grave diplomatic mistakes, and it's not just this one of Kiiza Besigye and Abedul Lutale. It's together. There are so many. I've recently seen Kenya gave an opportunity to a section of a rebel group of Sudan, given them platform to declare their next
They
action.
also had earlier on given a section of Congolese to make
Oh,
a
yes.
statement in Nairobi.
Yeah.
I think those are strategic mistakes.
Those are
diplomatic
very,
strategic
yeah,
mistakes.
those are very, it's not very interesting, especially for a country of Kenya, which has actually enjoyed a regional dominance for some time, you know. Making such mistakes is not very interesting. But
You know, actually, Kenya, other than New York, and I think New York, Washington, Kenya actually, yeah, Geneva. Kenya hosts, in terms of hierarchy of the UN, the distribution of UN key offices, I think Kenya hosts or holds almost the third position. So there is a lot of, you know, international footprint in Nairobi, and you would think that because these people are next door, they should be wary and act very consciously. But I think Kenya has, particularly under President Ruto, has bungled its foreign policy. And for me, I don't know about Tim. I was not surprised that Mr. Odinga did not make it
Earlier on, even
to the
other
AU.
lady had also lost.
Yes,
Amina
Amina had also lost. So
So it seems Kenya's hegemony is dissipating, is disappearing, is dwindling, is
yeah, actually, you know, and again, when you highlight the recent AU,
do you think it had a bearing, Dr. Besigye's plight had a bearing on Odinga's loss for the chairmanship position?
It's part of the broader, again, the diplomatic mistakes that Kenya has made, and it's not just on Besigye. We've seen them on the position of Israel. We've seen them taking positions in France. There was a recent call with between President Ruto and the French the French president, which he came out very clearly, and there were some positions that they took which didn't go well with some of the francophone countries. We've seen also
actually there will be a summit, a francophone summit, in 2017 in Kenya, and you know that there seem to be this you know, for lack of a better word, you'd call it probably another move to the east by the francophone. The francophone countries seem to be collectively resenting against particularly Paris. So Macron is feeling very jittery about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at what is happening in Congo, you know, Kenya has been accused of taking sides already. You know, it's not a
neutral mediator.
Yes, it can. So from some of those things, and also more importantly, we've seen recently, actually, Ruto seemed to be viewed as a Western person who is a Western sympathizer and accommodates the Western ideology. And part of those are some of the things that could have informed how the AU elections went. And I think there are so many other mistakes that when you compare the candidates where they're coming from and some of those positions and the overall interest of AU made Kenya's candidate weak. But more important, if you look at the Raila's stature, the position, and the experience, him as an individual, he was a very good candidate. But the mistakes, the things that came along with some of those that the country weighed led to his loss.
Actually, I listened to a clip of PLO Lumumba, and it makes a very interesting point. He says Kenya actually misread, literally misread the intended terms of reference, because this was position of chairperson of the council, and which is a secretariat, but they went parading Raila like some kind of president of Africa. So, and you know, there was an interesting tweet by the chairman elect, the man from Djibouti, and if that tweet was verified, he raised some very serious points. he was saying, you know, the AU is a place for serious business. It is not a place to dump retirees and political failure. So Kenya must be very wary of what they should be looking over their shoulders, wondering what the other people are saying about them.
As we conclude, Tim, on the question of the AU, new leadership, do you think there could be any possible intervention in regards to this matter?
Of Uganda?
Yes.
I think we have bigger problems in the continent than what is happening. We've seen AU has not intervened. AU's ability and sometimes interest are informed by very many things. And I think even its capacity, you know, to have a very firm intervention is greatly compromised. And so I don't see a situation other than maybe making a statement, coming out to make a statement. There's very little that AU can do.
Thank you, Tim, for your viewpoints. Doctor, as we conclude, this position where Uganda finds itself as declining in terms of democratic governance, the promotion of the rule of law, and human rights, could we potentially become a pariah, not only continentally, but also on the international political plane?
Well, I think to respond to that, I like what the opposition leader, General Muntu, said recently. He actually posits that what is happening to Besigye now and seems to be raising a lot of uproar is not anything new. He's surprised, or he frowns at Ugandans and he says, well, this is what the NRM government has been doing. You know, this is what has been here. Probably now that it's Besigye, it is only sort of highlighted in a different way, but many Ugandans are experiencing this, and it's something that I agree with. You see, I insisted a lot in the beginning of my conversation that this committee in Parliament has a huge responsibility to bear, because the only way out of this situation is to keep the conversation on. You know, we cannot afford to not to talk about this situation, because the only way out of it is to chat a dialogue. Professor Ndebesa has told you, because once you're confronted with somebody whose policy is coercion, and therefore he's not willing to go into a consensus, to avert the national crisis that he talks about, then is to continue providing a window for a conversation. So again, the conversation should also be an expanded conversation. And the only way we can expand this conversation is to continue to raise awareness of what is. Like, for instance, Uganda has ratified a number of statutes, international statutes, conventions that uphold the principle of good governance, of human rights, and all this. And there is an act, actually, in our body of law that stipulates, stipulates and accommodates on how these conventions can be ratified or domesticated, so that they are law in effect as part of our municipal laws. But how much of that is going on? We have so many conventions that stop just at ratification and never get domesticated. The only specialized unit within Parliament that can monitor that is that Committee on Human Rights.
Are we running the risk of being isolated at the international stage on account of the dereliction of that duty to observe those statutes?
Yes, there is a very high risk. And it's not that we are just running a risk. We are already fairly isolated. Look at our, and you know, it takes a very multifaceted face. It's a complex thing. For instance, look at the contributions to our national budget. They have incrementally and substantially fallen in the last 10 years, so to speak. We are left with a budget that we largely have to fund. You go to any of these ministries, or when you talk to contractors and these people doing business with government, you know, whether it's building a water point, a bridge or something, there's almost no activity now because there's no money. You know, this economy, by the way, is at a standstill.
It is growing, except that it is not equally distributed.
No, well, I would agree in a way that is in as long as you deploy the methodology of gross domestic product. But immediately you try any other methodologies, for instance, GNP, and also, for instance, include the indicator of happiness, then you really know that there is trouble in this country. There's so many people who are miserable. To say that Ugandans are happy, you know. So and I think it is I think it is a technique that the NRM has mastered. The president actually, I told you the other time, I stopped listening to the president's speeches because I can by day or night tell what the body of this speech will be. So, you know, it's a whole convolution of these GDP figures and which don't translate to anything, because once you try to extrapolate, I mean, just look, I have been trying to read reports, especially in the education sector, what is happening in parallel. I was shocked. I looked at a UNESCO report which was saying out of every 10 teachers, you know, particularly primary school, that were dropped or who dropped out as impacted by COVID, and many of them took to border riding and other petty businesses. They have never gone back.
In Uganda?
Yes, they have never gone back to, I mean, 9 out of 10, 9 have never gone back. And they were subjected, there was a survey, a countrywide survey done, and they were asked, would you love to go back to teaching? And they squarely said, no. If you go to NTCs right now, by the way, the teaching profession is dying. And that is a serious issue. And Ugandans need to be aware. Right now, if out of every 10 Ugandans aspiring to go to college, if you asked, would you include teaching as a choice, you probably get 1 out of 10.
No, some information, the head teacher of this school, the girls' school, the neighborhood is what? 20 college Nabing. Yeah, asked senior 5 students who had just come in as to how many would want to be teachers after graduating, or if they get the chance, who would put their first choice as education? None.
So you know, for me to conclude, like they say in the Bible, I don't know the Bible very much, so but at least I know some sections of the Bible say that you know, for a nation that is not educated or lacks knowledge, then it is a dead. And that's what we are seeing here. We have all apparatus of government that have been donated to patronage. You have all sorts of, you know, Professor was talking about chaps are riding on motor vehicles without number plates. And so there is a whole bunch, you know, of masqueraders, you know, running around and have taken hostage most apparatus of government, and without the police, without any positions of knowledge. So you ask yourself, in terms of national strategy, where are we driving ourselves? I know, for instance, right now there's a conversation going on at the launching of NDP
4.
Is it 4?
Yeah.
Yes. But if you look back, NDP 1, NDP 2, NDP 3, where are the results? So why even go to 4 before? So it does not surprise you that somebody is using taxpayers' money roaming around, that is monitoring, is it PMU? So this country, anyway, if there is a God somewhere, I want to start to believe there is a God. It needs prayers.
Interesting observations, but thank you, Dr. Tolit. Professor, I think his point on education should have rattled you. Any concluding
Well, it
comments
has
as well?
rattled me, but maybe to mention, you almost wanted to say that the economy at that level is not growing. I think it is growing because our export earnings from gold is now 2.4 trillion.
Where are your minds?
But that's an exclusive enclave
what would be
of
your
a certain-
indicator,
Professor?
It's an exclusive enclave of a
Uganda is
certain...
exporting gold worth 2.4 trillion. But how much is going to revenue authority? That's the point I'm making. You have multi-dimensional poverty in the north, in Acholi, 61%, in Karamoja, 60%, I don't know where percent, but we are exporting gold worth 2.4 trillion.
But is that
That is a problem.
But is that
But what is the
Ugandan gold?
indicator,
It is
Professor?
not taxed.
Where is-
Yeah, what-
but is that Ugandan gold?
It is not taxed. Yeah, I don't know
Maybe-
whether it
maybe that is why- maybe that's why they are-
The point I was making, there is a mismatch between the economic growth and
The reality.
human development and the reality on the ground and the roads and whatever. But what I wanted to conclude with is that we need to rethink, maybe to use Semakadi's words, the new radical bar. We need a new radical parliament. We need a new radical politics. We need a new radical youth. We need a new radical politics of accommodation, of unity and diversity, where we are all respected and can make a contribution towards resolving the national question. Otherwise, if we don't have a new radical politics in this country to take the country back to the foundation of respect for all players, I think we are on a wrong path. And you can see this Kiiza Besigye affair is mobilizing the national anger. We don't need national. If it reaches a boiling point, the lid will go off and the Pandora's box, the proverbial Pandora's box will open up, and you will see how Uganda will look like. So please, the political actors need new radical politics of respect for diversity, of unity in diversity, and of respecting all political players. This business of arresting people that is now ongoing as if they are grasshoppers, they are human beings. They are human beings. Don't just pick people and take them to safe houses and then the business remains as... In fact, we are talking about Besigye as a person because he's prominent. But I'm told from what I listened in the news last night, within about 3 days, 18 citizens have been arrested without trace.
Is that arrested though?
They are being arrested by drones and taken to nowhere. Now, these are human beings. They are not just rats. These are human beings with families, with relatives, and they are looking at that, and the anger is boiling. It might reach a certain point where it can blow up, and we don't want that. We want to build a nation state built on firm foundations. Maybe we need a new radical politics.
That's a patriotic appeal from Professor Ndebesa. But let me appreciate my panelists, Dr. Charles Tolit, Atiya, Mr. Timothy Chemonges, and Professor Mwambutsya Ndebesa for their patriotic insights and guidance to the citizenry and for enriching today's discussion. Many thanks to you, our esteemed viewers, for keeping us company from the start of this program up to its conclusion. Much appreciation to the production department for keeping us live on air. Our dear viewers, please engage us on our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on YouTube, where you can watch this program, and also subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.